Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. The summer heat had settled thick over the quiet neighborhood of Charleston, South Carolina, where life moved at a slow, comforting pace, until the day everything changed for Al and his wife, Layla. On the surface, they were the perfect couple, married for 4 years, living in a cozy 2-bedroom home with soft white curtains and the scent of fresh lavender always floating through the air. Al, a calm and thoughtful man in his early 30s, worked from home in tech support, while Layla, sharp and radiant, taught art at the local community college. But behind the morning coffee and goodnight kisses, something had begun to shift between them. Al had been noticing things. Small things. The way Layla paused before responding, the way she stared out the window longer than usual, her soft laughter turning distant at times. He didn't say much, he never did, but inside, questions stirred. Was she bored? Was she slipping away from him? Or was he imagining it all? That afternoon, something in the air was different. Layla had left her art supplies scattered across the living room, something she never did. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Al found her in the bedroom, half-turned, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. She didn't look at him right away. Then, without a word, she smiled, not the smile he was used to. It was gentler, almost teasing. Al stepped closer. She didn't move. He stood behind her, close enough to feel the warmth of her skin, the softness of her breath. He wasn't sure what he was doing, or why his hands reached for hers the way they did. Something inside him had cracked open, something old but powerful, an ache, a need. And when she finally turned to face him, there was no confusion in her eyes. What happened next wasn't wild or reckless, it was slow, intense, and utterly silent. Their connection, which had felt like a thread about to snap, began to tie itself again. But it wasn't just about passion. It was about memory. About promises they'd once made and forgotten how to keep. Yet, just when it seemed everything was falling into place, Layla pulled away. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you." Al's heart pounded. Was it someone else? Something she'd been hiding? His hands dropped to his sides, cold rushing into the space between them. The silence grew heavy again, more than before. Then the front door creaked open, unexpectedly. And that's when everything began to change. The sound of the front door creaking open jolted them both. Layla froze, her breath caught halfway in her throat. Al turned instinctively toward the hallway, his heart racing. "Did you forget something outside?" he asked, but she shook her head slowly, eyes wide. "No. I locked it. I always lock it." For a few seconds, silence wrapped around them again, but this time it was sharp, almost cold. Al moved quietly toward the door, every step heavy with something he couldn't name. When he peeked into the hallway, there was no one there, just the faint sway of the door slightly ajar. He closed it gently and turned the lock, unsure whether it was the wind or something more. When he returned to the bedroom, Layla was sitting at the edge of the bed, hands folded tightly in her lap. "You were going to tell me something," Al said softly. She looked up, her eyes glassy but focused. "It's not what you think," she said, voice trembling a little. "It's not another man, Al. But it is something I haven't told you. And I didn't mean for it to go this far." That word, far, echoed in his mind. How far had she gone? How long had she been holding it in? And why now? Al sat next to her, close enough to feel her warmth, but not touching. He waited. He was good at waiting, always had been. That's what made him different. But tonight, the silence between them didn't feel like safety, it felt like a line being drawn. Layla took a deep breath, looking down at the floor. "I've been talking to someone, about us. About what we were before. About how we used to be." Her voice cracked slightly. "He's not a stranger. He's from our past. Al felt the blood drain from his face. Their past wasn't perfect, it was full of bright moments, yes, but also shadows neither of them liked to revisit. And now one of those shadows had found its way back in. He looked at her, trying to read the truth in her face. "Who is it?" But before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. One message. No name on the screen. Just 2 words, "I'm here." The room felt smaller all of a sudden. Every corner darker. And just like that, the questions outnumbered the answers. Al's fingers hovered over Layla's phone. That message, just 2 words, "I'm here," echoed in his mind like thunder in an empty room. Layla didn't stop him as he picked it up. The screen still glowed. He turned to her, his voice low. "You said it wasn't another man. Then who is this?" She swallowed hard, her eyes brimming with something she hadn't let him see in a long time, fear. "His name is Marcus. We were close before you and I got serious. We lost touch, until a few months ago. He messaged me after finding an old art piece I had posted online." Al couldn't help but wonder, why reply? Why now? Layla stood slowly and walked toward the window, arms crossed. "It started innocent," she said, her voice soft. "Just talking. Just remembering. But Marcus, he remembers things in a way that made me question if I'd left something unfinished. Not love, exactly. But curiosity." The weight of her words hung between them. Al had never been jealous. Not in the possessive kind of way. But this wasn't about possessiveness. It was about wondering how much of her had already drifted somewhere he couldn't reach. And now, Marcus was here. Outside, a car engine hummed for a second, then turned off. Al moved to the window beside her. A black sedan was parked across the street. The figure inside wasn't clear, just a shadow waiting. Watching. Al pulled the curtain halfway shut and turned back to Layla. "Did you tell him to come?" "No," she said immediately, then hesitated. "But I told him where we live. A while ago." You didn't think he'd actually show up?" He nodded, more to himself than to her. The room suddenly felt like a stranger's home. For a long moment, neither spoke. But beneath the silence, questions swirled. Why now? What did Marcus want? And more importantly, why hadn't Layla told him earlier? Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the shadows of Al's heart, another feeling began to stir. Not just doubt. But something older. A memory. Al had secrets too. Before Layla, before marriage, he had made a promise to someone else. A promise he had never confessed. Maybe Marcus wasn't the only ghost stepping back into their lives. Outside, the figure stepped out of the car. Layla gasped slightly. "He's coming to the door." Al didn't move. His jaw clenched, thoughts racing. What was Marcus expecting to find? A broken marriage? A second chance? Or something else entirely? The doorbell rang once. And everything they thought they knew, about love, about loyalty, about each other, was about to be tested in ways neither of them saw coming. The doorbell echoed again, louder this time, cutting through the thick silence that wrapped around Al and Layla. She stood frozen near the window, her hand gripping the curtain so tight her knuckles turned pale. Al didn't move, not yet. His heart was beating too loud, as if his body was warning him that this moment, this man on the porch, was about to change everything. Outside, Marcus stood with the kind of stillness that made Al uneasy. He couldn't see his face clearly, just the sharp shape of his shoulders and the confidence in his posture. This wasn't just a visit. Marcus had come with a reason. And somehow, Layla was right in the middle of it. Al turned slowly to her. "Do you want me to open the door?" he asked, his voice calm but heavy. Layla didn't answer. Her silence told him more than any words could. Al walked toward the door, pausing just a second before unlocking it. With a slow breath, he opened it. Marcus stepped inside, as if he belonged there. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, calm voice. He didn't look at Al first. His gaze went straight to Layla, and the way her breath caught told Al everything he needed to know. Marcus spoke with a steady voice. "I didn't come here to fight. I just needed to see for myself what you chose instead of me." That sentence landed hard. Al stepped between them, not aggressive, but protective. "You've seen it. Now what?" Marcus glanced at Al for the first time. "Now, I ask her one question." Al looked back at Layla, and her face was unreadable. Not afraid. Not angry. Just torn. "What question?" Al asked. Marcus took one step forward, just enough to make Layla shift her weight. "Do you still feel it? What we had? Even now?" Layla looked down. Her silence stretched the air thinner and thinner until it felt like the whole room might collapse under it. Al felt something crack inside him. Not because he thought she'd say yes, but because he wasn't sure anymore. And then, just as she opened her mouth to speak, a loud knock banged on the back door. All three of them turned, startled. That door never got visitors. Layla's voice trembled. "No one knows that in trance." Al's chest tightened. Who was outside now? The knock at the back door didn't just interrupt the moment, it shattered it. Al's breath caught in his throat as he turned toward the hallway, instinct pulling him toward the sound. Marcus didn't move, but his expression darkened. Layla backed toward the wall, eyes darting between the two men like she was suddenly realizing she had no control left over what was unfolding. "Did you invite someone else?" Al asked, his voice tight, barely above a whisper. "No," Layla replied immediately. "I swear I didn't." Al didn't trust many things in that moment, but he believed her. The back door knocked again, twice, firm and deliberate. Al motioned for them to stay put and walked slowly down the hallway, each step echoing like a warning. When he reached the kitchen, he paused, heart pounding. He looked through the side window, but the back porch light had blown out days ago. Just darkness. Shadows. And a presence. He unlocked the door slowly, cracked it just enough to peek through, and froze. Standing there was a woman. Early 30s, soaked from the light rain that had started to fall, her hair clinging to her face. But Al recognized her instantly. It was Emily. He hadn't seen her in over 5 years. She looked up at him, eyes full of emotion, and said one word that dropped like ice into his chest. "Hi." Al stepped back, stunned. Emily had been part of his life long before Layla, his first serious relationship, the one he'd almost married. The one he'd left without warning when his life fell apart after a personal tragedy he never talked about. He looked over his shoulder toward the hallway, then back at her. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you," she said. "You didn't answer my messages. I found your address through an old contact." "I'm sorry, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." Layla's voice called from down the hallway. "Al? Who is it?" Al didn't answer. Emily's eyes flicked in the direction of the voice. "You didn't tell her I existed, did you?" He shook his head slowly. "It was a long time ago." Emily took a breath. "Not for me." Behind him, Marcus's voice cut through the hallway. "You said you weren't hiding anything, Al." Al turned. Now all three of them were visible to one another, Layla, Marcus, and Emily, each carrying secrets, each tied to a version of Al the others didn't know. The walls that had once felt so safe were now closing in, each corner of the house holding a memory or a lie. And for the first time, Al realized this wasn't just about who Layla might choose. It was about who he used to be, and what he never let go of. And the truth? It was no longer just knocking. It was already inside. Al stood frozen between two worlds, his past, soaked and breathing hard on the back porch, and his present, unraveling right in front of him in the hallway. Layla's face was pale, her lips parted, watching him like she was seeing a stranger. Marcus, still calm but unreadable, stepped forward. "Looks like we all had secrets, huh?" he said quietly, not as a threat, but as a truth they could no longer ignore. Emily walked inside slowly, eyes locked on Al. "I didn't come to ruin anything," she said, glancing at Layla. "I came because I needed to say goodbye. To the version of you I was holding on to." Al's throat tightened. This moment felt like a fire, and every word, every memory, every unspoken truth was fuel. "I should have told you," Al said, his voice cracking as he turned to Layla. "I shut out that part of my life so completely, I convinced myself it never mattered. But it did. And I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that kind of silence." Layla took a slow step forward. "Neither did you," she whispered. "But that silence, it became a wall. And I kept filling it with things I wasn't saying either." She looked at Marcus next. "You reminded me of who I was before the walls. That's why I answered. But it was never about wanting something else. It was about finding the piece of me I thought I'd lost." Marcus nodded, his expression softening. "I get it now," he said. "You're not the same girl I knew. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop thinking about you. I was chasing a ghost." Emily smiled faintly. "Seems like we all were." The tension finally cracked, not in a dramatic collapse, but in the quiet, aching kind of peace that comes when everyone is finally honest. Marcus walked to the door. "Take care of each other," he said to Layla and Al, "or at least try." Emily gave Al one last look, no anger, just goodbye, and followed Marcus out into the night. Al closed the door slowly. Layla was standing close now, too close for words. He reached for her hand. But just before their fingers touched, a voice came from the kitchen. A small, tired voice. "Mom?" Layla turned sharply. Al's heart stopped. A little boy stepped out from the shadows. Neither of them had seen him arrive. And neither of them had ever said they had a child. Al stared at the little boy standing in the kitchen doorway. Layla's breath hitched beside him, and her hand slipped from his. The boy looked no older than 5, wearing a navy hoodie and soft sneakers. His eyes, wide and curious, carried a strange mix of innocence and something familiar. Something that made Al's chest tighten. Layla slowly stepped forward. "Ethan," she whispered. "I told you to stay with Aunt Rachel." The boy rubbed his eyes. She fell asleep. "I got scared." Al turned to her, stunned. "You have a son?" Layla nodded slowly. "Yes. I was going to tell you. I just never knew when. I thought if I waited, I could protect you from more confusion. But I see now. I only made things harder." Al bent down, kneeling to the boy's level. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Al." The boy blinked, then looked at Layla. "Is he the one you draw?" Al looked up at her. Her art. The paintings. All those moments of silence when she'd sat by the window, sketching in thought. He never realized he had been in them. Ethan had seen him through her eyes before ever meeting him. Al stood up and looked at Layla, not with anger, but with something deeper. "You should have told me. But I'm here now. And if you'll let me, I'd like to stay." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she nodded. "We can start over. All of us." Over the next few weeks, things didn't magically fix themselves. They talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Emily never returned, and Marcus sent one last message. Sometimes, closure is just knowing it's over. Al wrote back, "Thank you for showing me who I am." Layla introduced Al to Ethan properly, explaining everything in small pieces. He didn't ask for much. Just time. And trust. They started doing simple things together, morning walks, cooking pancakes, drawing in the garden. Slowly, the home that had felt so full of ghosts became something new. Something real. In the end, it wasn't the past that defined them. It was the choices they made after everything came undone. And sometimes, the biggest twist of all, is realizing love wasn't lost. It was just waiting in the quiet moments, ready to begin again. If this story moved you, tell us how you felt about the ending in the comments. Would you want to see a sequel? Let us know, we'd love to hear your thoughts.